Well, it's time to unmask America's children. I mean, that is the science. So Senator John Thune, Senate Minority Whip, joins me now. He's got some new legislation, very important legislation. Senator Thune, I would say good for you, sir. Tell us about it. And can this thing get through the Senate?
It only takes 51 votes, Larry. It's a Congressional Review Act resolution of disapproval, so it's simple majority. It would be privileged, and it would stop in its tracks the Biden administration's rule, which currently requires, if you can believe this, children under 5, children as young as 2 years old, to wear a mask, including on the playground in Head Start facilities. It is a crazy regulation, a crazy rule that needs to be done away with, but if they aren't going to do away with it, we're going to put them on the record. And so that's what the legislation would do.
Senator, I mean, aren't there a bunch of Democrats who will agree with you and vote with you, for heaven's sakes? I mean, I say it, I know this is not the greatest era of bipartisanship and all that, but the science is on your side. The damage done to these, little toddlers is horrible. So, why won't Democrats join you? At least some, let me half a dozen Democrats, something like that.
Well, you'd think, and there are some who are up for re-election this year who might want to think about voting for this, but parents are frustrated, Larry. You hear it, I hear it. In fact, this originated in my hometown of Murdo, South Dakota, where the Head Start facility said, look, this is a crazy mandate. You guys got to do something about this, because it does inhibit kids' learning. It doesn't allow them to mature socially, to be able to interact with other kids and with teachers. Parents and guardians ought to be deciding this, not the federal government. And as you pointed out, the science is clear on this. There is no benefit. They say the World Health Organization said children under 5 shouldn't be required to wear a mask, and there's no health or safety benefit from that. But just as importantly, it's common sense. You look at the least vulnerable group when it comes to the pandemic. It's these young kids, and yet the most heavy-handed of all these regulations coming from the government is imposing this mandate on kids under 5. It's insanity, and it's outrageous. And as a parent and a grandparent, I'm like every other parent, grandparent in this country. I'm like, stop this insanity, and we're going to do everything we can to make that happen. Well,
it's a great piece of legislation. Let me shift gears a bit. I had Phil Gramm, former Senator Phil Gramm. You know him very well. He was on my radio show this weekend, and he was talking about how to end inflation. And his proposals, he said, pause the spending and reform welfare, meaning put workfare back into welfare. Now, it's the pause the spending part. So, seriously, do we need a $350 billion industrial policy corporate welfare bill which purports to compete with China but does nothing of the sorts? Then I'm going to ask you, I'm hearing a $30 billion new COVID bill. I mean, really? We need another COVID relief bill? Last count I saw, they had to spend $800 billion on the existing COVID relief bill. And then finally, sir, wouldn't a CR be better than a real appropriations bill? Because the CR will keep the spending levels low. The appropriation current services baseline will jack it up 16% or more. What do you think? Let's pause the spending.
Yeah, no question about that. I mean, evidently only in Washington, $8 trillion isn't enough. We've spent so much on COVID already. And, there's always a new proposal coming out of the Democrats, and they always justify it as this is COVID relief, this is pandemic relief. And as we saw a year ago, the $2 trillion, about 15% of it had anything to do with COVID. 85% of it was growing government.
Right.
That's what Democrats do. When they get power, they grow government, they expand government, they spend money, and they raise taxes. And we're seeing all of that with this administration and the far left Democrat leadership in the Congress. Larry, I think the only thing I can argue in support of a longer term spending bill as opposed to a continuing resolution is the impact on the military, because Democrats never want to fund the military, and a CR makes it difficult to fund some of the weapon systems and technology that we need to be able to invest in to stay ahead of our adversaries. But other than that, the spending ought to stop. It just needs to stop. And starting with the $5 trillion so-called Build Back Better bill, the Democrats are trying to push through over the objections of people like Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema. This stuff is crazy, and it has fueled inflation unlike anything we've ever seen before.
Yes.
You know, families across this country. A year ago in January, when you guys left office, Larry, inflation was 1.2%, well within the Fed's target of range of 2%. 7.5% now. This last year, it represented a $3,500 tax increase on every family in America. It's unbelievable.
We just had today, Senator, an import price number up 10.8% for the 12 months ending January, and that is probably a leading indicator of consumer prices. So you are correct. Last one, Senator Thune. I just had my dear friend Kellyanne Conway. Why shouldn't the Republican Senate and their candidates have some future vision to run on? Something positive the way the House is. I'm not asking for a detailed blueprint. Actually, I am. I'm asking for one specific item. I would like to put in there to make the Trump tax cuts permanent. Okay, that's my one detailed blueprint. But other than that, in general terms, wouldn't it be wise to have a vision here for the? I know the cavalry's coming, but sometimes the cavalry needs a little vision.
Yeah. Well, and I think we need to prosecute the case against this radical left-wing extremist agenda put forward by the Democrats. So that's got to be part of our message. And most midterm elections are referendums on the party in power, and they run all of government. They have the House, the Senate, the White House, and everything. But to your point, I don't disagree. I mean, I think, and I would add to making the 2017 tax cuts permanent and the wasteful spending, pass trade promotion authority, come up with an energy policy that makes America energy independent again, which we were, and we're exporting energy prior to these guys coming to power and shutting down all these projects. And I would do something on big tech to make them more transparent, more accountable. I think that's something the American people are asking for. But I think there's an agenda out there that's positive, that's forward-looking, that's pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-opportunity, and that's what we should be for. We should be articulating a hopeful vision for the future, in addition to taking down the Democrats for everything that they've done to destroy the country, starting with this runaway and rampant inflation.
All right. Senator John Thune, thank you, sir. We appreciate it very, very much.
Great to be with you. Thanks, Larry.
All right.